They added two different notes that need to be addressed as far as parental notification made when the child is truant. So the new requirements include informing the person in parental relation that a student who becomes habitually truant may not transfer during the school year to a cyber charter school. This was part of the amendments that were made in the budget that was passed in what was that, November. So this is one of the changes that were made. And then resources available to assist the student and persons in parental relationship with returning the student to compulsory school attendance and opportunities for academic recovery. So those are the notifications that were required as a result of the passing of the budget updates to school code. So any questions on those revisions for policy 204 attendance?
These changes are just to stay compliant with the new.
You got it. Yeah.
And I noticed we've been making these changes. They used to be in red, are they green?
Yeah. So,
Kind of like that.
well, so the new language is in green. This language is being removed is in red and the straight through.
I like that.
Okay, great.
I like the 2A. Is there situations where people are habitually truant and try to go to the cider?
Yes.
Happened. That's good. At least we have a little more control over that. That's correct. Because once you're habitually too many absences, that's you're there the rest of the year, right? Yeah, there's no getting out of that. So okay.
Any other questions? Moving on to, actually, we're going to skip down to 805.1. The 218.1 weapons will probably take a little bit more time and conversation. So I thought we'd hit the easier ones first. So 805.1 relations with law enforcement agencies. That policy, a small change, was updated to include the requirement from the school code for a procedure addressing the timely coordination between the district's threat assessment team and law enforcement agency with jurisdiction over the school property. Incorporated in the MOU. So that was the only and minor change in that policy. Any questions on that one? The next one, school security personnel, policy 805.2. Number of changes, and once again, these are all based on new updates to the PA school code and new requirements for the school safety and security coordinator. So the new policy includes coordinating meetings with the school and building leadership team on at least a quarterly basis and keeping attendance reports of the school and building leadership present at each meeting, creating an attendance report of school and building personnel present at the school safety and security meetings, including those on the yearly attendance totals. And that's to be included in the school safety report presented to the school board by June 30th of each year. And then final two are, in addition to coordinating mandatory school safety training for staff, the school safety and security coordinator must now meet with staff annually to receive their input on the training. And in addition to the 7 hours of training during the first year, the school safety and security coordinator must now complete any subsequent continuing ed requirements that may be implemented by the school safety and security committee. So those were the major changes. I can tell you that Dr. Sobachan has done a great job and has already started to implement the changes for our school district. So thank you, Dr. Sobachan, for doing that. Any questions on revisions to policy 805.2?
They identify and call out what is a school day in this now, and does that mean security is not required for evening sports and everything else, or it does? So that's our choice whether we bring them in.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Then we'll come back to policy 218.1, which is weapons. So major, not really major changes for Warwick School District, but practice is our practice will continue to be very much the same of what we've done in the past for notification from families. But part of Act 44, right, was once again to comply with PA school code, which outlines new notification requirements when an incident involving possession of a weapon occurs on school property and at a school-sponsored event or conveyance providing transportation to or school sponsored activities notifications are now required for the appropriate population of parents or guardians and district employees, in addition to previously existing requirement of notifying any parent or guardian whose child was directly involved in the incident. The appropriate population to be notified is determined by where the incident occurred in the individual school. So that's the new requirement. I can share with the board that we did send notification home to our families yesterday and also our staff, letting them know of the new requirement that took actually effect today. So, normally it takes some time for board policy to catch up with the school code. So PSBA released this the week before the holiday break. So it's our first opportunity to take a look at policy. The good news is, for the most part, our definitions did not need to change. I'll come back to that section of our policy later, okay? But you can see all the new reporting requirements are indicated in green in our new policy, along with the notes that they provided. As an administrative team, unfortunately, the definition of weapon and the fact that it includes the replica of a weapon, right, does not necessarily meet the federal code, right? So when you look at federal statute or codes, I'm pretty sure it does not include the replica of a weapon. So we felt it was important as an administrative team to actually define what a replica of a weapon is, because we certainly don't want a water gun being treated as a weapon in our district. That just doesn't make sense. There's no usually cause to harm. There's usually no fear of being harmed, right? That a reasonable person would fear. So we don't think that should institute a notification to all families that a boy's water gun was brought into a school. I think our notifications for families would be a lot more frequent. And I don't think that really is the intent of the code. So we would like to add, as an administrative team, this is not being suggested by PSBA, but we would like to add our definition of what we think the replica of a weapon should be, to clarify exactly what that means and how it would fall under the definition of a weapon. Any questions on that? And then I do have one more suggestion that I've been thinking about over the break. And the policy does not clearly define what incident is. The school code does not define what incident means. So I do think that we need to do a job of defining what an incident is in order and put it into policy so the community is clear and has a better understanding of what an incident at school means. So some people could determine, right, that an incident, and I'll just give a suggestion. A scout is at an event over the weekend. They're out hunting, fishing, just doing scout things, or even just a family. The child puts a pocket knife in their backpack, forgets it's there, gets to school, right? Their pocket knife is at school, right? The child recognizes that, oh no, I have a pocket knife in my backpack, takes it down to the principal and says, hey, listen, I have this, instead of trying to hide it all day long, right? Is that an incident, right? To me, there was no harm. It was recognized, it was handed in. I don't think that situation should be treated the same way as someone who intentionally brings a weapon to school with the intent to harm or cause injury to others. So I know the community can't see this now, but they would for first reading. My suggestion, right, based on feedback from other school districts, would be to add language that is called intent and harm standards. So for the purposes of this policy, an incident would include an incident requiring formal reporting and expulsion consideration occurs when a student's possession of a weapon involves one or more of the following elements, right? So not only there's two elements, intent element and a harm element. The intent element would be bringing that weapon into school, deliberately bringing a weapon to school or school activities, knowledge of a weapon possession while on school property, planning or preparation to use a school weapon. The harm element would be actual use of the weapon against a person or property, threatening behavior involving a weapon, creating a fear or an alarm through the display of a weapon, reckless handling that endangers others. And then there's also, I'd like to add a safe harbor provision that means possession that is both unintentional and self-reported shall not constitute an incident for reporting purposes when the student voluntarily discloses the weapon or provides credible explanation for an innocent possession and surrenders the weapon without resistance and also has no prior weapons violations. So I would like to add that language to our policy or a version of that language, so our community is absolutely clear what an incident means in our district.
For purposes of this part of the policy or this definition, would a handgun be treated the same as a pocket knife?
If there's intent, yes. Yes, it would.
Well, even if there's not, even if
Yeah.
there's, so if a student has a handgun in their backpack,
Yeah, that's gonna be.
but actually says they didn't know it was there or forgot that they put it there.
Yeah.
It would
what
be
I'm-
treated the same as the scout knife.
No,
That's how I read this, so that's my question.
yeah, okay.
Should it
You're
be?
saying the incidental, accidentally leaving in there, realizing and thinking in that, so the same
I think that's a
scenario.
bigger,
Mhm.
I think that's a bigger issue than,
No,
I mean, I understand the scout knife example, I think. I think though, I'm concerned that we're defining weapon for purposes of this exception pretty broadly. And I don't know how that would even comply with the law. I mean, if we would, for example, if we have a student. Again, let's
Yeah.
presume innocence, as far as, not knowing knowledge going up, but still comes with a loaded handgun in their backpack. And we find out about it. I don't presume we can just
Well, I think they're,
not report.
I think they were dealing with those that's a handgun, which you can't possess unless you're 21 or older.
Yeah, that's.
So by default,
But
that
it's-
would be a weapons, that'd be like a weapons violation.
Yeah.
Break physical laws.
But that, there's a legal standard and then there's a school standard too. I'd see where you're coming from,
Yeah,
where if that student would self-report. Can't have it over, I just think can we provide a little more structure to that definition?
We definitely can, and this is a good starting point, and that's
That's
what we have.
Title 18, that's our laws.
Yeah,
So if you go into Title 18 for our laws, as a police officer, I can only. Go by what's in Title 18, that's what we go by. This is a little bit different, which is helping to identify. For the public, what we are considering a weapon, which is good. A lot of school districts don't do that. So I think it's a good thing to help you. But as a police officer, if I get called, I'm gonna come and I'm going to if it's a knife. Person had no intent, I can't even prosecute that anymore. You used to be able to, but you can't now. The intent has to be there, so. I like the way that this is written. I mean, obviously, if they have a handgun and
yeah.
I
prosecute.
guess the
There's a
question is,
weapon.
Dr. Wolf, how do we? How do we make sure the community is aware that handgun would be treated different than a knife?
We have some language here, like as part of the safe harbor, in addition to the requirement, or an additional requirement that. The possession of the weapon can't violate or otherwise be unlawful. Or something like that, because, like you said, merely having a handgun on school property would
It's
be.
got to be charged.
yeah.
Would be accountability.
Plus, I would defer to our chief as well, because he's a retired lieutenant
Sure.
and an investigator, so.
Mhm.
We
can-
definitely have the right people in the right places, so.
Any other comments or feedback? I think we can take that and work with our team here at the school and come up with some language for a first read. Once again, we can always change things, and that's how policy works, right? This is just to read, get ideas flowing and out in the open.
So you and I had this conversation before. I like the addition of intent. What are the circumstances? So how would it be treated in a circumstance where a non-traditional weapon or something that wouldn't traditionally be classified as a weapon would be used as a weapon? The first thing I think of is a pen or
Yeah.
a pencil. So how do you handle that weapon circumstance?
Yeah, so we have that defined, right? So in our policy, it's for any other instrument capable of inflicting serious bodily injury. So we go back to that, right? And then we take a look at our definition of incident. Did the student deliberately bring, right, the pen that to school to cause harm, right? Did they have knowledge of it, right?
Yeah.
Did they plan, so any of those bullet points, if they did. Any of those, we would treat it as an incident and a notification,
No matter what the object was.
correct? Yeah.
If the intent of the object is to harm somebody, that it isn't a traditional.
Seriously harm.
Yeah.
I want to make a distinction between. Other questions or feedback?
I just want to say thank you. I know this has been an ongoing conversation to get some language wrapped around this. And for me personally, I appreciate that we are encouraging students to have a voice, knowing that there are times where mistakes happen with, like you mentioned, Dr. Reifsner, the scouting incident or whatever, and not creating a culture of secrecy, but creating a culture where we hope and desire students to come forward, if they find themselves in a situation like this.
So we'll continue to work on the language and get buttoned up for the board meetings on the 20th. Okay, and if we need to make changes to that meeting, we still have time to make changes, so. All right, thank you, everyone. Next item is the 26-27 school calendar. Next school year presents us with some unique opportunities, with Labor Day being on September 7th, so it's much later than normal. So at this point in time, a lot of school districts are starting the week of the 24th. We traditionally traditionally at Warwick, we would start after Labor Day. Recently, we started the week before Labor Day. A lot of districts moved to starting 2 weeks and at times maybe even 3 weeks before Labor Day. But it presents us with an opportunity to start a week earlier than what we're most recently used to, or start just the week before Labor Day, which is what we're recently used to. Okay. So long story short, we reached out to our staff to kind of see and get their feelings and on how they'd like to proceed. The results of the staff survey indicated that about 63% of our overall staff would like to start the week of August 24th. Our professional staff, our teaching staff, for the most part, the number was even higher. It was almost 70% would like to start the week of August 24th. That would be a change for our community and our families. So at this point, knowing the direction the staff would like to take, we would like to survey our families to see if to get their feedback on the start date, because we know it has implications with family vacations and so forth. The day wise, it's not much of a difference. So I think this year we started on the 26th, I think 25th or 26th. The 25th. Okay, so next year start date would still be the 25th or 26th next year. So as far as the calendar days, it's really the same date on the calendar. It's just because Labor Day is so late, it's the week. And I know a lot of families like, well, when's Labor Day? And they backpedal from there and backpass from there. So so unless anyone has any major objections, what I'd like to do is send out a survey for our families to start completing tomorrow with a deadline of next Wednesday, so that we can still present this in time for a January 20th board meeting to get the calendar approved, so our families can plan accordingly. So so that's really the update that I have for everyone.
How does it compare to, what's our last day?
So the end date would just be up a week, right? So next year, the end of the school year would either be the week of probably the 3rd or the 4th, if we start our traditional time frame, or I shouldn't say traditional, our most recent tradition of starting the week before Labor Day, we would end either the 10th or 11th.
Right, but what's our last day? 2026.
It would be the same. Yeah.
So it's really,
It's really.
this year it's one day, it's one calendar day.
Yeah.
We started. It just feels early because
Yeah.
of when Labor Day is.
Yeah, my only question, are we gonna have, does it materially shorten the summer? By starting the
This-
date we're talking about? No.
Good question. The other thing we asked our staff is we traditionally have a trade day that butts up against the spring break or Easter break. next year, that would be about an 8-week stretch of time that there's no break for students. So we're not going to survey our families on that one. Our staff were pretty resounding. Hey, we would like some sort of opportunity for families and for us, you know, as teachers to take a break. So we are going to move that tree day to April. Any questions?
How are you gonna let the community know that this survey is it just going out through email? Are we gonna
It's
post
going
on
to go-
social media?
It's going to go out through our school messenger system. Right?
I think it definitely makes more sense. You actually get 2 weeks of school before Labor Day now, where traditionally it's like 2 or 3 days, then you have Labor Day, and so it's actually better at it.
So I'm interested to see what the community has to, and our families have to say. Okay. That's all that I have. Does any other member of the board or any of our administrators have any other items they'd like to bring forth tonight? Thank everyone for coming. Thank all of our community members that are here tonight, and that ends our January committee of the whole.